So now we look at social welfare and social development. As discussed, mainstream comparative political policy inquiry has neglected normative concerns. Normative concerns are primarily European or even Western European. There are new normative concerns or frameworks to deal with the South, but they have been developed only recently. The issue is that the indigenous social welfare perspectives of the South have not been given importance, not only by the governments but also by the academia. If we look at the major literature, academic literature and policy literature on social policy since the 90s, there have been some increase in the focus on South. So there are some articles on comparatively looking at different states or countries in Asia or Africa. So this has increased. But the primary focus has remained on two areas. One is the construction of welfare taxonomies. So if we look at this taxonomy of welfare states, there are different models, 6 different models, and 5 of them are European, only one is East Asian, and there is no Latin American or African model. So we have Nordic model relating to Scandinavian countries, and Anglo-Saxon model related to United Kingdom, and continental model related to countries in Europe, continental Europe, and Mediterranean model related to countries in around Mediterranean, and then the East European model related to Eastern European countries, and only one model from East Asia, that is Confucian model. Another concern which focused, or where most of the academic literature was done, was the explanatory theory of social policy. Why, for example, in the 90s and 80s, the focus was why social welfare and why social welfare increased since the start of the 20th century. After 1990s, the focus was why the social welfare has decreased. What are the reasons for that? Why more and more countries are giving less social benefits to to their people? Why there are more restrictions on getting social security or other benefits? And then there was also the issue of why certain policies and not other policies. For example, while discussing crime, we looked at different philosophies related to crime. Why due process or why crime control? So these are the issues which the academia in the 90s and later on focused on. Because of the normative sway of the European or Western European model, East Asian, African, and Latin American states were also discussed or analyzed based on those models. So we have seen that there was this Confucian model, or we can say the East Asian welfare states model. But it is not discussed in its own different category. It is discussed as part of the European model. So you have this ideal model based on Europe, and then you have different other models, and then you compare and contrast that ideal model with the other models, real models, including the Asians and African models. But Asian models and African models are different. For example, the role of authoritarian state providing social capital in the 20th century was not something which was part of the European model. Western European states has had democratized by the most of them by the middle of 20th century. But East Asian states, of course, were not democratic even by the end of the century. So that model didn't have democratic components that were part of the Western European model. Then of course, the role of Western imperialism was ignored and de-emphasized in the European model. So if you look at, we are discussing social policies and comparative social policies, and the boundaries in Africa are directly linked with the civil wars. And civil wars are, of course, linked with the destruction of every type of social welfare that is given. So when we are discussing social welfare, we, of course, or academia, of course, do not talk about Western imperialism and how maps and boundaries of African states were drawn in drawing rooms or in offices in Western Europe, in London and Paris. And if you look at this African map, you can see that many of the boundaries, for example, Libyan or Algerian boundaries, are straight lines, meaning thereby that somebody took a ruler and then draw the boundary of a country without looking at the natural things that are there, for example, mountains or rivers, or ethnic issues or religious issues where a majority of Muslims live or Christians live, or where majority of ethnic community lives. So what has happened is that tribes and ethnicities have been divided, and religion, of course, have also been divided. Religious people have also been divided, and this has, of course, led to civil wars. But this we don't discuss in social policy, even when it's directly contributing to what is happening in Africa today. Then, as feminist perspective has shown that general focus on social welfare hides as much as it reveals. So the woman contribution to social welfare is not acknowledged. Similarly, the contribution of religious organizations is not acknowledged, because most of the academia is secular, and they think that religion in public affairs is not good. It's even until recently, even the contribution of the slaves to the American and other economies was not discussed. It is only now in the last 10 to 20 years that people have thought of looking at how slaves contributed to the American economy without getting any social welfare or social policy benefit of social policy.